And we're back to talk about, of course, the second vehicle, I mean technically only the second one that we can buy at the moment, from GT7 1.36, the classic Corvette, 1958 C1 generation, although of course this is technically the later C1 shape. I'm more of a fan of like the 1954 original, the super Art Deco, very round, swoopy one. Those are only about, 150-ish horsepower though. These 243, so quite a lot better, still by 50 standards, that's a heck of a lot of power, and it's not overly heavy. It's no flyweight, but 1,327 kilos is not bad at all. The point level, as you'd expect from those numbers, is not that high, about 430, and I would actually say that for that level, it's a pretty damn good car. It's very good through corners for a stock, classic American car. The fact that it is smaller, two-seater, rear-wheel drive sports car probably helps, plus it's got a lot less power to deal with than something like a Cobra would have, which also helps out a lot. And speaking of the Cobra, this is a heck of a lot cheaper than something like that as well. 126,000 credits is actually unusually cheap for the legendary dealership, or the Haggerty collection as it's technically called. Of course that could change, that's the whole point of the dealership, and I know in some cases it's changed quite a lot. I believe the 911 GT1 has way jumped up in price, so that could happen here, but for the moment 126k is pretty cheap by Gran Turismo terms. Of course it's front engine, rear wheel drive, naturally aspirated, and although you could kind of turn this into the Art Morrison if you wanted to, I believe that was based on a, I want to say 1960 shape, I think C1 with, again, if I recall correctly, I think the 7-litre motor instead of this one, so of course way up the food chain. But as I alluded to before when I talked about this car coming to the game, this one with only 240 or so horsepower, the fact that it is a lower point level, a lower price level, well, not only does it mean that you get to feel more like you've done the work, rather than with the SEMA cars, they've already been built by someone else, but also it means that, especially on the lower end of things, it has a lot more use. So with something like the Art Morrison Corvette, if you were to tune that down to this level, it would be nowhere near as effective and kind of pointless to even buy it. Whereas with this, it's not too expensive, it's already got a decent amount of power for that point level, and if you just, as I often like to say, drop the weight a bit, lower the ride height, stiffen up the springs, better brakes, certainly in the case of an older American car, some longer gearing helps immeasurably. Those kind of simple upgrades can still keep you really far below 500 points. In some cases maybe even lower than 475 or 450 depending on your needs, but be a really good car at that level. And one of the key advantages of a Corvette is of course being a sports car and not a muscle car, which typically the older American stuff from this era tends to be in Gran Turismo. It's a lot smaller, a lot lighter, and way more nimble through corners than muscle cars are. It doesn't wallow around anywhere near as much, it's much lighter on its feet, it's much more poised, more focused. Even in stock form, to be honest, it handles itself really nicely. More so what you might expect from something like a BMW 507 or a Mercedes 300 SL, and of course that makes sense. This is more that kind of machine. Right up until today, that's what the Corvette still represents, a really good performance car, not just a big overpowered American boat. And I would say Gran Turismo does a pretty damn good job of representing that in the game. It also has some pretty nice visual upgrades, actually. You can add the chrome roll bars. In fact, it's the only car I can think of, technically, where you can do that in the game. I'm sure there's something that I'm forgetting, and of course, technically it's just a roll cage in a certain sense, but not in this, classic way of having a roll bar. And although you can dechrome it, I'm personally not a huge fan of doing that on the front end. Removing the additional little detailing from the boot though, I do think makes it look a lot better, a lot smoother and cleaner, and certainly with bigger rims, a lower ride height, well, even without the performance of the Art Morrison Corvette, you can make it look like a pretty nice show car. It's got that great lowrider vibe. I love the interior on these C1s, especially in red as this one is. It looks gorgeous. I love the big speedo, almost like a TVR Tuscan kind of display in front of you. And yeah, it's just a lovely car to drive. Like I said, it's not going to rip your face off, it's not going to blow your socks off or redefine what you think a car is capable of, much like the Maserati in that way, but it's a very pleasant, nice little classic, certainly a very iconic one, hugely important to Chevy's history, certainly to Corvette's history, it goes without saying, and it is, although not a car technically that's been featured in Gran Turismo before, it's certainly in the sphere of those Corvettes that have been featured, and is a welcome return face for those of us who do like the older American stuff, certainly myself included. So that's it for my thoughts on the C1. Of course, give me yours down below. Do you love the car? Do you maybe not like it so much? Have you not even bothered to buy it yet? And my final thought on it is, I would not be surprised at all if we can do some kind of engine swap for this one in future. Probably something like a LT4 Camaro engine, maybe an LT5 Corvette engine, something like that wouldn't be out of the realm, I think, of possibility. And if that happens, well, then we may just have to feature it in a future special projects pack to replicate an Art Morrison Corvette. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But overall, that's it for my thoughts on the C1. Of course, stick around for more Gran Turismo 7 content, and I'm actually not finished with reviewing the cars just yet, so stick around tomorrow for more, and until then, I'll see you next time. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.